there. When I think about going to confession, something that awaits us all, the thought that comes to mind is blank. Think about that for a moment. When I think about going to confession, the thought that comes to mind is, talk to the person next to you for a second. Just share with one other person. The thought that about going to confession, the thought that comes to mind is what? Say it to the person next to you. That means you're talking right now.
I want to hear. Come on. Yeah, I'm waiting to hear. There must be something going on there. I'm waiting to hear, Pat. You know what I'm saying? Okay, I'm waiting to hear. What? Because I don't go to confession. So
Hey, it wasn't meant to be a paragraph, just a few words.
When I think about when I go to confession.
So what are some of the thoughts that people have?
Great cleansing.
Yes.
Relief.
Okay, will God forgive me? Great question. What else are the thoughts people have? Truth. Okay, it's the truth. Truth sets you free, right? Having to squarely face the truth in our lives. What are the thoughts?
What's the priest going to think?
What's the priest going to think of me? Okay, very good. What else?
Oh, you went already.
No, but that comes to my mind.
Embarrassed or not?
Are you going to be embarrassed? Okay, if you're putting out there all the things you've done wrong. Okay, very normal thoughts. Okay, and hopefully we'll address some of those and give people. I'll share a little bit from my perspective of being the person on the other end. All right. So what we like to do is we've looked at the sacraments of initiation already. What were the 3 sacraments of initiation? First one, baptism. Second one, third one. Okay. Thank you, Sister Gail, for answering the question. Okay. Baptism, confirmation, and Eucharist, the 3 sacraments of initiation. Today we look at what we call the sacraments of healing, reconciliation, and anointing of the sick. Now, the sacrament of reconciliation is called many things. People will say confession. They'll say penance. Okay? The thing is that confession and penance are 2 aspects of the sacrament of reconciliation. Okay? Because the sacrament is reconciling you to God. One of the things you do is you confess. The other thing you do is a penance. So they're aspects of the sacrament of reconciliation. And then the sacrament of anointing of the sick, which sometimes is referred to as the last rites, right? You've heard that, like in movies, people say, oh, call the priest to get the last rites. The last rites are actually much more than anointing of the sick. Okay, there's anointing of the sick and other things that go along with that. Anointing of the sick is not just, though, for people who are dying. It's for the sick. And we'll talk about that a little bit. So, point number 1, through the sacraments of Christian initiation, we receive the new life of Christ. But the weakness of human nature and our inclination to sin continues to remain and affect our lives. Okay? So hopefully none of you are thinking that once you're baptized, confirmed, and receive Eucharist, you're going to be perfect. Right? Was anyone thinking that was going to happen? George was hoping it was going to happen. Actually, I think Sharon was hoping it was going to happen. But it's not. So we need these sacraments of penance and anointing to continue the journey, right? So we hear the 4th and 5th commandment, and some of you are sitting there looking at that like, like I got all this sin, right? Well, these sacraments are meant to help us overcome the sin, right? Because the sin is an obstacle to our life with Christ, okay? God understands our weakness, right? Jesus became one of us. So he understands what it's like to be sick. He understands what it is to suffer, right? That great question about, could you take a pill to end your suffering? Well, remember, Jesus suffered. He probably wanted to quit. At one point he says, Father, if it's possible, take this away from him. But he doesn't. He suffers to the end. And so he gives us that example, right? And throughout his life, he's overcoming sin in the lives of others. So during his own earthly life, and when we answer the questions at the end about, who remembers our definition of a sacrament? Sacrament is an outward sign instituted by Christ to give grace. All right? So we're going to look at the outward sign, what we see in these sacraments. When did Christ institute them? And what is the grace given? So during his life on earth, Jesus forgave sins, right? How do we know that? Where do you know these stories from?
The Bible.
In the Bible, right? The Gospels are filled with stories where Jesus forgives sin. Now, how do people react to that?
They didn't like it.
They didn't like it. Why?
It's only God can forgive.
Okay, maybe someone other than Sister Gail. Okay? She's in her Super Bowl mode. She wants to give the answers. Okay? How many pieces of cake did you have, Sister? That icing, I think, is piping you up there. Okay? How did people react when Jesus forgave sin? Very good. Okay? The scribes and the Pharisees are reacting saying, hold on, you don't have the authority to forgive sin. He's saying, yes, I do. They're like, but only God can forgive sin. And he's saying, bingo, I'm God. Okay? And other people came and asked for that forgiveness, right? Great story of the woman at the well, right? Who's caught in sin. Right? And Jesus forgives her. She wants the living water. She wants forgiveness. And so there's many, many stories where Jesus is forgiving sin. And also where he's restoring people who are physically ill. The gospel we heard today. Peter's mother-in-law. All right? I thought that was a pretty good joke, Lester. Did you think it was the mother-in-law joke, Lester? Were you laughing? No, you weren't, Lester. All right? All right? But people who are physically ill, the blind, the deaf, the crippled, right? Sometimes even the dead are raised up. All right? And then Jesus is also healing those who are emotionally wounded. Right? Lots of emotional healing. So anointing of the sick is not just for those who are physically ill, but also for those who are dealing with depression, anxiety, even more severe mental illness as well, because Christ healed those folks. Sometimes people go back and forth. All these folks who were afflicted with demons, you know, were they really possessed or were they schizophrenic? You know, again, now we know what schizophrenia is, but at the time of Christ they didn't, right? So what was it? But it doesn't matter because Christ brought healing to that. Christ brought healing to that pain, whatever it was. And so the church continues these two healing ministries of Jesus. Ministry to sinners, ministry to those who are suffering in body, mind, or spirit. So when Jesus forgives sin, he also pointed to its effects. That when someone is forgiven of their sin, they're brought back to the community. Right? So we live in a world where people at least think that most of their sin is private. Right? No one knows about my sin. The reality is that most people know about your sin. Anyone who lives with you knows about your sin. If your sin is selfishness, the people that live with you, they know you're selfish, right? Yeah. Right? If you're a liar, right, people know that you lie, right? If you steal, right? Imagine someone in your house, your little sister steals your makeup, all right? You're going to be upset with her? You're going to banish her and tell her she's not allowed to sit on the couch next to you or something like that, right? See, sin has an effect. All sin has an effect. So people say, oh, sexual sins don't have an impact on anyone. It's just between me and the other person, right? No, it has an effect on the way you treat other people, right? The ripple effect of sin. And Christ made that clear in the scriptures by the way he talked to people about their sin. That the sin is not just between the person and God, which is what a lot of people think. But my sin affects other people. All right? So we've got in the paper these days, there was last Sunday, the woman who stole the money from the archdiocese, right? Stole almost $1 million to feed her gambling habit, right? So, on the one hand, she's thinking, well, I'm just gambling. Well, I did wrong. Okay, I did wrong. And a lot of people on the Philly.com in the comments, well, where's the church's forgiveness? Can't she just go to confession? Okay, well, yes, she can. And God will forgive her. But guess what?
She broke the law.
She stole your money. She stole your money. And so it's not just about the forgiveness between God and her, but just to be reconciled to the community. All right? Other things, right? Other things. Pride. If I think I'm better than you, that's going to have an impact on you. That's not just a sin between God and me, but it hurts you. It hurts you. All sin hurts other people. As pastor, if I'm lazy, that hurts the parish, doesn't it? Right? Just like at home. If a parent is lazy,